Next is the artificial intelligence voice of Abdaal narrating this pod-like summary of the Dito podcast. Abdaal's discussion with Professor Steve Peters presents vital information about deciphering the human mind for more effective performance. Peters, a leading psychiatrist, has devoted his career to comprehending our cognitive processes and has lent his expertise to elite sports stars like cyclists Sir Chris Hoy, Victoria Pendleton, and the English football team. Peters stresses that it's his role to guide individuals in understanding how their minds function and equip them with the necessary emotional skills. However, the essential work of implementing these skills and creating change rests with the individuals themselves. A central premise of Peters' work is the distinct separation between the mind and the self. Drawing on personal experience as a medical professional in the 1990s, Peters had an epiphany that a patient and their mind are two separate entities, a realization which fundamentally altered his approach to medicine. Peters' first book, The Chimp Paradox, which has sold millions of copies worldwide, uses a simple model to describe the complex machinery of the mind. The model depicts the mind divided into three main parts. The chimp, an emotional, primal brain acting subconsciously without our explicit consent. The human, representing our rational, compassionate, and humane side. And the computer, our memory bank storing memories and experiences of our lifetime. To be effective in his work, Peters does functional analysis to trace multiple influences that might have shaped a person's mind. His analysis covers their culture, childhood experiences, parents' influence, their established pattern of thinking, behaviors, and emotions. While working with a team, Peters does not impose specific topics of discussion, as different players have different needs for their improvement. Some might present performance issues, like fear of the crowd or lack of confidence, while others want to discuss self-esteem, relationships, or family dynamics. Each session is tailored to the specific needs and wants of the individual, always aimed at improving performance and well-being. I see when discussing investments. Trading, 212 was recommended for investing a broad stock market index funds. This app allows for commission-free investments in stocks and shares. A useful feature of the app is the Pies and Auto Invest feature, where one can copy investment allocation from successful traders and apply it to their personal investments. The app also offers multi-currency accounts to help avoid foreign exchange fees. Trading 212 is sponsoring the current season of the Deep Dive podcast. Here's another sponsor, offering ready-to-eat meals containing 400 calories and 22 of protein per serving, 26 vitamins and minerals, made from natural ingredients and vegan. Finally, the discussion acknowledged that KJB, a platform assisting creators diversify their revenue with courses and membership sites, communities, and coaching tools, is also sponsoring the podcast. Many creators use KJB and reportedly achieve sustainable income and often millions in earnings. Delving deeper into the conversation, Professor Steve Peters elucidates his mind model. A significant revelation in Peters' career occurred as he investigated patients' brain scans under different emotional states. When in human mode, marked by rationality and logic, the scans showed activity in the dorsal lateral prefrontal cortex. This part of the brain uses facts, logic, acceptance, and solutions. In contrast, when the patients were under emotional or intense states, the orbital frontal cortex was active. Here, emotions, feelings, and intuition guide decision-making, with facts often sidelined. Exciting discovery was that this model corresponds to the way children develop. Until about the age of 2 or 3, children primarily function under the Chimp system, reactive and emotional. However, as they mature, children begin asking why, indicating the emergence of the human brain, initiating reasoning and cognitive abilities. This revelation led Peters to coin the simple, student-friendly terms chimp brain and human's brain, representing our two distinctive cognitive systems. Under your cognitive profile, whether you have reactive or calm chimp's brain, can greatly leverage your performance. For instance, Ali identifies as having a relatively calm chimp, rendering him a hyper-rational individual. While advantageous in situations such as public speaking, it can sometimes prevent him from detecting intuitive cues of potential danger. Peters explains this situation well, highlighting the significance of recognizing our inherent cognitive characteristics and adapting accordingly. Moreover, cognitive systems aren't isolated. They're significantly interconnected. When our chimp brain operates, it considers inputs from the human system and vice versa. However, sometimes our chimp brain might instill unhelpful beliefs or behaviors in the computer, which need to be identified and managed. Another fascinating point Peters brings to light is that life settings can significantly influence our vulnerability. Unfamiliar environments like parties or holidays can lead to atypical behavioral characteristics, leaving us open to potential challenges or risks. In Ali's case, they introduced a 72-hour button system for any new idea he enthusiastically presents. The team pauses on it for 3 days, and if Ali is still passionate about it afterwards, they contemplate it further. This method provides an example of how insight into our cognitive characteristics can prove effective in day-to-day tasks and decision-making process. To conclude, Professor Peters' guidance encourages individuals to self-assess, gain insightful understanding of their cognitive characteristics, and tailor their responses accordingly. Further exploring his mind model, Professor Steve Peters discusses how individuals can identify and manage the beliefs and behaviors negatively impacting their lives. He uses neuroscientific evidence to classify these beliefs or behaviors into two main categories: Gremlins and Goblins. Gremlins, he explains, are unhelpful beliefs or behaviors that we've solidified into routine patterns over time. These beliefs don't exist in isolation. They dance as a gang with 5 to 7 other beliefs supporting them. That's once we identify these gremlins, we can handle them one by one, overturn them, and replace them with a truthful belief based on facts and logic, which Peters terms the autopilot. This new belief forms a new pathway that, with time and reinforcement, eventually dispels the gremlins. Conversely, goblins represent aspects that have caused damage to the system, like a computer virus. A bad childhood experience or a traumatic event could be ingrained so deeply in the neural circuits that it may seem impossible to remove. Such situations require containment instead of removal. Individuals need to recognize these goblins and learn to live with them and manage them effectively. Peters also talks about imposter syndrome, viewing it not as negative, but as a warning from the chimp brain. This warning can be processed as a question inviting you to evaluate your performance or your values aligned with your goals. This then becomes an opportunity for personal growth and development, turning a perceived negative into a positive, productive instance. Empathetic external perspective, such as that of a therapist, can help in these instances, providing the stability the chimp brain seeks. Overall, the human, chimp, and computer form the neuroscientific blueprint of our brain. The chimps and the computer, ingrained in us at birth, work together to shape our beliefs, memories, and interpretations of memories influenced by the human aspect's meaningful inputs. However, this model isn't static. It allows for modifications and removal of unhelpful beliefs, emphasizing the importance of maintaining an internal harmony or homeostasis. As Peters highlights, it's crucial to acknowledge that we aren't meant to be isolated as humans. We work as part of a team, and external validation from close ones can often provide the balance our chimp brain seeks. Understanding how our brains function, acknowledging the contributions of our chimp and human aspects, and approaching our beliefs and behaviors with an analytical perspective can significantly improve our overall mental health and cognitive performance. To lead upon the central themes, Peters puts a spotlight on certain societal practices we mistake as positive reinforcement. He dives into a hypothetical where a proud parent might put their child's artwork on a refrigerator. Such romantic acts can unintentionally communicate a harmful message to the child. They're loved and valued only when they do something their parents approve of, a phenomenon labeled the fridge door syndrome. Presenting an alternative approach, Peters suggests parents first affirm their unconditional love for the child, making a distinct separation between their personal value and their achievements. This approach allows children to develop self-criticism and resilience, not tying their self-worth solely to external accomplishments. Research indicates that such resilience cultivates a resistance against peer pressure, as the emphasis shifts toward internal validation, promoting a healthier self-esteem. In similar contexts, he discusses imposter syndrome, explaining that individuals with this syndrome often live in fear of making mistakes and getting things wrong. They tend to perpetually seek the approval of others to maintain a perfect image, unintentionally becoming their harshest critics. He assures such individuals that recognizing this pattern is the first step toward disrupting it and shifting their validation system from external to internal. Peters upholds the importance of holding oneself to one's personal values, not allowing external achievements to dominate their self-worth. He cautions the risks of such a perspective, acknowledging how the chimp brain can constantly strive for better, never being satisfied with achievements, even ones that previously seemed paramount. In a significant statement, Peters shares his life philosophy, helping even one person makes their efforts worthwhile. Drawing from his personal experience, he shares the initial apprehension caused by his unconventional works-wide acceptance. However, seeing its transformative impact on people's lives reaffirmed his resolve. So the balance between the human and the chimp brain remains paramount throughout. Peters emphasizes allowing the chimp brain to motivate and propel one toward achieving their maximum potential, but insists on switching to the human brain afterward. This practice brings about a sense of self-pride and resilience against adverse circumstances, celebrating efforts rather than focusing on outcomes. Peters' work serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of self-validation, kindness, and compassion. His insights equip individuals with the tools to navigate life with resilience and emotional strength, cultivating an internal stronghold that isn't easily swayed. The conversation progresses into deeper psychological terms as Peters distinguishes between goblins and gremlins that influence our mindsets. The fridge door syndrome, he explains, is an example, a goblin, a pattern so ingrained in our brains that it becomes challenging to change. Such patterns can stem from early childhood experiences, as our brains have developmental windows during which certain behaviors are molded. If these windows are neglected due to traumatic experiences or neglect, they could lead to emotional instability, clinginess, or overreactions in adulthood. As mental wiring, as per Peters, can sometimes be difficult to alter because certain areas of the brain may not have developed as they should have. Acknowledging this reality, he advocates working with the machine in the brain instead of trying to change it. In contrast, gremlins represent false beliefs formed based on adverse experiences. These misinterpretations about the world can often be corrected when conscious efforts are made to debunk them. For instance, a person betrayed in their first intimate relationship might cast a blanket doubt over all potential future relationships. In such situations, Peters advises reminding oneself of the simple reality that wrong choices are made and, quote, you kiss a lot of frogs before you find your prince. Peters brings home the point that these beliefs, goblins or gremlins, form part of our computer-like brain that the human and the chimp brain refer to for guidance and advice. The programming of his brain, or what he calls autopilots, can influence our response to varying situations. Sometimes these autopilots can condition us to react a certain way in social situations or even to drive to work subconsciously. I stress that to remove unhelpful gremlins, we must replace them with new positive pathways. This can be done by changing our beliefs or altering our behaviors, but he notes that these pathways must resonate with the individual to be successful, as what works for one person may not necessarily work for the other. Ipsos discusses the power of the phrase, what's the plan, in snapping us out of our emotional reaction and into human mode. This coping strategy, he says, is often effective in times of emotional distress, acknowledging that sometimes there may not be an immediately actionable plan, such as when a desired relationship ends. He advises framing reality of the situation as a plan, accepting that it's going to hurt and life will go on is a form of plan in these scenarios. He reiterates the importance of our autopilots being supportive and comforting echoes of reality, guiding us through the storm. This concept of effective coping strategies is further underscored through a somber example of parents who have lost a child. These deep psychological scars, he believes, may never truly heal. However, learning to manage the painful days and appreciating the better ones can help navigate this tragic event's emotional aftermath. Peters' pragmatic and compassionate approach to mental health issues delivers insightful tools and strategies for individuals, amplifying the importance of self-awareness, self-management, and resilience. Diving further into the complex workings of our mind, Professor Peters draws attention to understanding and managing our emotions judiciously. Dissects the distinction between controlling and managing emotions, indicating that control implies an optional state where one can choose how to respond, whereas management is a skill to cope with a specific situation. In his interpretation, expecting someone to control their emotions can be almost abusive, akin to asking someone to fly, while managing emotions seems a more achievable and compassionate approach. And building on this concept, Peters explains how our supposed negative emotions, such as anger, could often be a disguise for underlying hurt or worry. In this context, he illustrates how words play a significant role in mediating our emotional responses. Prioritizing the language our chimp brain uses, Peters shares the profound impact it can have on our emotions. Labeling oneself as angry, for instance, sets an alarm, triggering defensive or aggressive responses. However, choosing a less emotive word, like despondence, could alter one's mindset and minimize the emotional reaction. Peters extends his dialogue onto the subject of vocabulary training for the chimp brain, steering the conversation towards the importance of finding the most fitting words for our emotions. This perspective is that changing what we call our emotions could inadvertently alter our emotional responses, establishing a behavioral pattern that's more easily manageable. Furthermore, he critically examines the term should often used when setting expectations. He indicates that the frustration or anger arising from unmet expectations often stems from the use of this word, proposing a more forgiving alternative. This semantic alteration, he believes, transforms these expectations into opportunities, thereby reducing the potential for disappointment. Abdaal, the host, shares his recent experience with therapy, revealing how identifying and expressing the root cause of his feelings of anger improved his relationships. He also mentions an app, How We Feel, which offers an array of vocabulary for various emotions, aiding him in exploring and understanding his feelings further. Professor Peters appreciates the app, reinforcing the idea that specific word choices can dramatically reshape his emotional reactions. To further his concept of managing our brain, Peters delves into positive emotions and their origin. He suggests that our chimp brain, often associated disproportionately with negative emotions, is responsible for our laughs too. As his parallels, his earlier views that being in a chimp mode all the time isn't necessarily detrimental, as long as we are capable of running it in when needed. It's about striking a balance between logic and emotion, and more importantly, recognizing when to switch between the two modes of our brain for optimal mental health. Expanding the conversation from emotional management to the various complexities of our chimp brain, Professor Steve Peters breaks down its tendency towards gullibility. He explains that our chimp brain is typically quick to accept what it hears and rationalizes afterwards. Like, for example, when we hear a joke, the humor rises from the chimp, accepting the premise and then being caught off guard by the punchline. Therefore, not only does our chimp brain drive our impulsive decisions or emotional reactions, it's also responsible for our laughter and motivation. However, Peters is cautious of motivation, as it can often be counterproductive. He discusses the situation of facing a task like gardening, where the overwhelming size of the task results in procrastination. Instead of waiting for the right mood to strike, which might never occur, he suggests making a commitment to do the task irrespective of one's mood, which will eventually motivate the chimp brain. Next, Pierce addresses the terminology of willpowers and discipline. He believes these terminologies are inappropriate, as there are no specific neural circuits that allow us to enforce control over our emotions or responses. Instead, he introduced the concept of emotional management as a skill that enables us to respond effectively to various situations, somewhat discarding the idea of willpower and emphasizing more on coping mechanisms. Continuing the dialogue into the realm of anxiety, Peters defines it as a message from the chimp brain, suggesting that all is not well. Here, the solution involves addressing the problem causing the anxiety, creating a plan, and reassuring oneself of the presence of solutions or help. In the context of ADHD, Peters points out that it's like an orchestra playing without a conductor. Medications for ADHD work by waking up the conductor of the brain, thereby helping the individual to function better. However, Peters emphasizes that although medication can be life-changing, the first approach should always be behavioral interventions and mental training for better results. Lastly, regarding depression, Peters differentiates between two conditions: malfunction, where the brain is not functioning properly, like a broken car, and dysfunction, where the brain works fine, but the individual doesn't know how to use it optimally, like not knowing how to drive a working car. While medications is an option for treating malfunction, dysfunction is best handled with talking therapies. In all, Peters reinforces the idea that effectively managing our brain or our chimp mind involves understanding how it functions and developing the skills to channel its actions beneficially. In this portion of the Deep Dive podcast with Ali Abdaal and guest Professor Steve Peters, the conversation explores Peters' career journey and provides guidance to those feeling uncertain of their paths. Peters shares how he unintentionally ended up working with elite athletes like Chris Hoy, explaining it was an organic process driven by opportunities that unfolded. He wasn't merely a sports psychiatrist. His work also involved engaging extensively with other sectors such as education and police. Peters' career shift to forensic science was another unplanned turn. His unflappable approach helped him get recommended for a position working with patients from Rampton, which expanded his understanding of the human mind and solidified his interest in neuroscience. In response to Abdaal's question about students feeling pressured to figure out their career path, Peters stressed not comparing themselves to peers. He stated it critical to remain in the present moment and work hard, reassuring students that opportunities would unfold as they start their careers. Acknowledging the increasing difficulty brought about by the rigid, rotational structures in the NHS, he hopes for a more doctor-friendly and flexible system in the future. Next, they discuss decision-making when faced with multiple opportunities. Peters recommends not getting too pressured or uptight, emphasizing opportunities could be seized in any chosen field, and career changes were always possible. He even mentions a halted initiative from 20,000 years ago, suggesting experienced consultants could shift to allied disciplines with a year's retraining. This could keep them engaged and pose another solution to rigid career structures. Towards the end, the conversation shifts to the correlation between external markers of success and happiness. Peters candidly admits that wealth can contribute to happiness, but it isn't a guarantor for all. He mentions seeing wealthy individuals struggle with feelings of emptiness and unfulfillment, often resulting from an over-reliance on chimp mode. This refers to focusing predominantly on impulses and basic needs lacking the human mode's deeper sense of meaning and values. For those feeling unfulfilled, Peters advises examining one's values and focusing on personal growth and nurturing meaningful relationships. The conversation continues with Professor Steve Peters and host Ali Abdaal exploring the ideas around self-reflection, values, and personal fulfillment. Peters underscores the importance of dialoguing with oneself and asking pertinent questions. He suggests individuals, particularly medical students under stress over their career progression, ask themselves why they pursued their field. Peters believes this helps put uncertainty into perspective. The exploration of values is deemed to be transformative. Peters suggests examining the immediate perception of values and its critical role in securing peace of mind. However, he acknowledges that defining individual values can be tricky. He explains that values are grounded in personal morals. A noted value example from Peters is respect, which he illustrates as showing understanding for others' perspectives, even without agreement. Values are proposed as being hierarchical, with the importance defined by individuals. Yet, these values can shift based on personal beliefs. Hence, Peters emphasizes the need for periodic revision. Guest and host also delve into the aspect of fulfillment. Peters recognizes the complexities surrounding this, but he encourages viewers not to take it too seriously. He calls for a balance between rigorous self-examination and the joy of life. Peters concludes by reminding individuals that life should not just be about achieving professional milestones. There should also be room for personal contentment. He advocates for living in the moment and not getting tangled in unwarranted worries about the future. He also emphasizes that everyone must find their way to a good place mentally and emotionally, explaining that this can have ripple benefits to those they interact with. Lastly, Peters cites his work A Path Through the Jungle as a guide to self-improvement. The book provides detailed insights and advice on managing mental health. He calls it a course to follow, where individuals can explore concepts at their own pace and understand their values better. Finally, he insists on the importance of enjoyment, noting life is about fun as much as it is about learning. This portion reflects a culmination of insights into personal happiness, career success, and relationships, offering a holistic and insightful perspective on leading a fulfilling life. Check out the full podcast by clicking the link in the description below. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for listening to this podcast summary episode of the Pod Slice.